There's a reason you left school knowing how to calculate the volume of a cylinder, but not how to negotiate a salary. There's a reason you studied the structure of a cell, but not how power works in the real world. You were taught to memorize, to obey, to repeat, not to question, not to see, not to win. And if that feels like a design flaw, I want to challenge you with something darker. What if it's not a flaw at all? What if it's the point? Machiavelli warned us, but we misunderstood him. We thought he was teaching rulers how to be evil, but what he was really doing was exposing the game. He was showing us the rules that the powerful already play by and what happens to those who don't even know they're in a game. And the truth is this: if you don't understand power, you will always be controlled by it. And school, at least the way it's designed, doesn't prepare you to become powerful. It prepares you to become manageable.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's start with the basics. What is power? Not brute force, not titles, not wealth alone. Power is the ability to shape your environment, to influence outcomes, to protect your sovereignty in a world trying to strip it from you. Power is awareness. It's strategy. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. It's being able to see the invisible levers behind people's actions. And none of it is taught in school. Why? Because power comes from independent thought. And school, for the most part, is a factory of dependency. Machiavelli understood that those in power rarely give it up voluntarily. They preserve it by controlling narratives. And where do narratives start? In education. From the moment you sit in rows, raise your hand for permission, compete for gold stars, and are told there is one right answer, you're being conditioned. Not for life, not for liberty, but for obedience. And here's the subtle genius: they don't break your will, they redirect it. They teach you to crave approval, not truth, to chase credentials, not wisdom, to avoid failure, not to learn from it. And slowly, without even noticing, you become easy to manage, easy to predict, easy to sell to, easy to govern. Let me ask you, when was the last time you were rewarded in school for challenging the premise of a lesson? For questioning the motive behind the curriculum? For asking, why are we learning this and who benefits? You weren't. Because the system doesn't reward critical thinking, it rewards compliance. And compliance is the opposite of power. Now let's connect this to Machiavelli. In The Prince, he writes, "It is much safer to be feared than loved if one must choose." That line got him branded as ruthless. But what he was really doing was this: he was showing us that reality doesn't care about your ideals. That if you want to survive and thrive, you need to understand how the world actually works, not how you wish it worked. And in that light, school becomes not a preparation for life, but a distraction from it. It keeps you focused on tests and grades, while the real test, the one of agency, of power, of truth, is being failed silently. Ask yourself, what does school train you to be? A worker? A follower? A specialist who knows one thing very well but doesn't question the system that uses your labor? School rarely teaches you how to build systems, lead people, persuade, or pivot in chaos. Those are the domains of the powerful, but they're not on the exam. And here's where it gets even more dangerous. The illusion of education becomes a substitute for real empowerment. You start believing that, because you have a degree, you're prepared. But Machiavelli would say, prepared for what? For bureaucracy? For debt? For a life where you wait for someone else to tell you what to do next? Let's take a step back. Why was Machiavelli so feared? Because he told the truth too clearly. He said that leaders lie, that appearances matter more than intentions, and that good people can be crushed by systems they don't understand. And that if you want to stay safe, you'd better learn how to play the game. Not with cynicism, but with clarity. And what he feared most was not evil, it was naivete. That's what school breeds in us when it teaches us how to follow rules, but never how to rewrite them. And here's where you come in. If you're watching this, you've already noticed the gap. The gap between what you were taught and what you needed. The gap between theory and reality. Between grades and grit. Now the question is, what will you do with that awareness? Will you numb it? Will you settle? Or will you start learning what school never taught? Because here's the secret, the most important education is self-directed. It begins the moment you stop waiting to be taught and start training yourself. Train yourself to think strategically, to read between the lines, to spot manipulation, to speak with intention, and to build leverage, to understand incentives, to see the moves behind the moves. That's power. And power is not evil. Power is neutral. It becomes dangerous only when it's hoarded by people who hope you remain ignorant. So what's the solution? You create your own curriculum. You study history, not dates but patterns. You study language, not for grammar but to influence. You study psychology, not for theory but to understand motives. You study Machiavelli not to mimic him, but to decode the world you were dropped into. Because once you understand how power operates, you stop being a pawn, but you become a player. And once you become a player, the game changes. The next part of this journey is going to be even more raw. We're going to explore how to unlearn the habits of powerlessness that school drills into you and how to replace them with skills that actually make you free, dangerous, able, and effective in a world that rewards those who see what others miss. If you were raised in a system that rewarded obedience, punished dissent, and measured intelligence by how well you followed instructions, then what you've been taught isn't just information, it's conditioning. School doesn't just teach you what to think. It teaches you how to think methodically, predictably, and most dangerously, safely. But here's the thing, the world does not reward the safe. The world rewards those who move first, speak boldly, challenge systems, and act with strategic clarity. And if you're still waiting for permission, approval, or instructions, you're already behind. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, but he wasn't cheering for tyranny, he was diagnosing it. He saw that those in power don't keep power by being fair, they keep it by being smart. He warned us, if you don't understand the rules of power, you will always be ruled by those who do. And today we see it everywhere. The most educated people often have the least agency. They're impressive on paper but invisible in the real world. Why? Because they've been trained to seek validation, not leverage. They've mastered the textbook, but not the terrain. So let's break it down. What are the core skills you were never taught? Because if you had them, you'd be harder to control. Number 1, how to think independently. Not just creatively, but critically. In school, critical thinking is framed as analyzing a poem or debating a historical event within pre-approved boundaries. But real-world critical thinking means questioning the entire frame. It means asking, why are we learning this? Who decides this curriculum? What worldview is being embedded here? But if you ask those questions too often, you become a disruption. And school isn't designed to empower disruptors. It's designed to produce compliant participants. Number 2, understanding incentives. Machiavelli knew that people don't act out of pure virtue or evil, they act based on incentives. If you don't understand what motivates people, money, status, fear, security, you'll misread almost every situation. You'll think someone's being kind when they're being strategic. You'll think someone's being honest when they're protecting their position. School doesn't teach you to read between the lines. It doesn't teach you to decode power dynamics. It teaches you to take things at face value. But in the real world, power is always hidden. It's cloaked in titles, smiles, and agendas. And if you can't uncover what's underneath, you'll always be surprised when the game turns against you. Number 3, how to speak with influence. You can write an essay, sure, but can you command a room? Can you negotiate? Can you reframe an argument on the spot? Can you speak so clearly and persuasively that people stop scrolling and start listening? School teaches you to speak correctly, not powerfully. It teaches you grammar, not rhetoric. But Machiavelli knew that language is one of the most potent tools of power. A single sentence, said at the right moment, can start a war or stop one. If you don't learn to master your words, someone else will use theirs to shape your fate. Number 4, how to deal with failure. In school, failure is a bad grade. It's shame. It's punishment. But in life, failure is data. It's feedback. It's the fastest way to learn. The most powerful people in the world failed more than everyone else, they just didn't internalize it as identity. School conditions you to fear being wrong. But Machiavelli would say, fear not learning. Because the person who learns fast, even through failure, eventually outruns the person who's always right but never bold. Number 5, how to read power structures. You were taught history as a list of names and dates, but not as a pattern of manipulation, strategy, and control. You were taught civics as a polite diagram of government branches, but not as a battlefield of lobbying, influence, and psychological warfare. You were taught economics as supply and demand, but not as a system of leverage, debt, and exploitation. Why not? Because if you understood how systems work, you might stop being a cog and start building your own machine. So here's the truth. If you want to unlearn powerlessness, you have to retrain your entire mind. You have to stop looking for the right answer and start asking the dangerous questions. You have to stop thinking like a student and start thinking like a strategist. What does that mean? It means you ask, what are the hidden rules here? Who benefits from this setup? Where can I create leverage? What am I not being told? But let's go deeper. Machiavelli believed that virtue alone won't protect you. He wrote, "A man who wants to act entirely virtuously in every way necessarily comes to grief among so many who are not virtuous." That's not a call to become corrupt. It's a call to become wise. Because if you show up to a chess match thinking it's checkers, you're not noble, you're naive. And in a world run by people who understand power, idealism without realism is a recipe for defeat. Ask yourself this: where in your life are you still waiting for permission to be powerful? Is it at work, where you wait to be promoted instead of building something of your own? Is it in relationships where you avoid conflict to stay liked instead of being respected? Is it in your beliefs, where you repeat what's popular instead of what's true? These are the places where your training is still running you. And until you unlearn that training, you'll keep playing small in a game that's rigged against the unaware. But here's the good news: power can be learned. Not just the manipulative kind, but the ethical, strategic, self-directed kind. And it starts the moment you stop outsourcing your thinking and start reclaiming your mind. You begin to study not just books but people, not just subjects but systems. You learn to observe, to map incentives, to speak with clarity, to act with intention. And slowly you become someone who doesn't just navigate the world, you shape it. In the next part, we will explore what it looks like to fully step into your power, not abstractly, but practically. We'll look at how to build a life that no system can contain, how to cultivate Machiavellian awareness without losing your soul, how to use power not to dominate, but to liberate yourself and those around you, to fit in, and you start trying to see. When you realize that the world doesn't reward the most moral, the most educated, or the most deserving, it rewards the most strategically aware. And in that moment you face a terrifying but liberating truth: no one is coming to save you. You are not here to be managed, graded, and kept in line. You're here to become dangerous. And by dangerous, I don't mean violent. I mean someone who can no longer be manipulated, but someone who sees the game for what it is and plays it not with cynicism, but with clarity. That was Machiavelli's true warning: not be ruthless, but if you're not aware, you will be ruled by those who are. So what does it actually mean to become dangerous? It means you stop asking for permission to live your life. It means you stop seeing morality as obedience and start seeing it as agency. It means you learn how to use power without being used by it. And that starts with a simple but radical shift. You stop trying to be good in the way school taught you and start trying to be effective in a way that still aligns with your soul. Because here's the core of Machiavellian wisdom: power is a tool. Like fire, it can burn, yes, but it can also illuminate. It can destroy, but it can also protect. And those who fear it completely will always be ruled by those who don't. Let's talk about what power looks like today. It's not just armies or politics. It's attention, influence, ownership, strategy. It's the ability to act differently because you see differently. It's the courage to say, "This job doesn't serve me," and walk away. It's the clarity to say, "This belief no longer fits," and evolve. It's the strength to say, "I don't need your approval," and mean it. School never taught you this, because school was never designed to create independent thinkers. It was designed to create compliant citizens. But you're not a citizen of a classroom anymore. You're a citizen of the world. And in the real world, those who are awake shape what happens next. So how do you use power without becoming corrupted by it? How do you stay human while becoming unshakable? You start by grounding your power in principle. Machiavelli wasn't advocating for chaos, he was warning that virtue without strategy is helpless. But strategy without virtue is soulless. The balance is this: know the rules, but don't be ruled by them. Translate your values into tactics. Want to live with compassion, then learn how to influence. Want to build justice, then understand how systems work. Want to lead, then study how power flows not in theory, but in reality. Because principle without power is noise, and power without principle is destruction. But power with principle, that's leadership. Ask yourself, what is one area of your life where you've stayed silent out of fear, not wisdom? Where you've played small, not out of humility, but out of training? That's the place where your conditioning still owns you. That's the place where you need to reclaim your voice. But don't just speak louder, speak smarter. Learn the language of influence. Practice the art of persuasion. Read not just philosophy but psychology, strategy, rhetoric, economics. Because the modern battlefield is mental, and the most dangerous weapon is clarity. Now, let's get even more real. Most people don't want you to become aware, because your awareness threatens their control. When you stop needing validation, they lose leverage. When you stop reacting out of fear, they lose influence. When you start thinking independently, systems of obedience start to crack. That's why Machiavelli was exiled, not because he was wrong, but because he was too clear. And clarity is always dangerous to the status quo. So what happens when you wake up? What happens when you realize that most of what you were taught about success, morality, and purpose was designed to make you useful, not sovereign? You start building a life that no one can take from you. Not just financially, but psychologically, emotionally, intellectually. That doesn't mean rejecting society. It means no longer being owned by it. It means being in the world, but not of it. It means being able to walk into any room, any situation, and not be thrown, because you know who you are, what you value, and how to move. And yes, you will be misunderstood. You will lose people. You will be called arrogant, rebellious, too much. That's the price of sovereignty. But the reward? You stop living reactively. You stop waiting for life to happen to you. You happen to life. That's what makes you dangerous in the most beautiful, liberating way. Machiavelli would look at today's world, this hyper-connected, over-informed, under-reflective culture, and he would smile. Not because he approves, but because he'd see exactly what he predicted: people mistaking credentials for competence, obedience for morality, and conformity for peace. But he'd also see people like you waking up, asking questions, breaking the script. And he'd say, now you're ready. Now you're thinking like a prince. So here's the call. Don't just unlearn the lies, build the truth. Don't just reject the system, replace it with a better one. In your body, in your mind, in your daily choices. Build power anchored in principle. Use your voice with precision. Walk into rooms with quiet strength. Read people, read systems, read reality, and act accordingly. That's not manipulation. That's mastery. You don't need to be ruthless to be powerful. But you do need to be real. You need to stop waiting for someone to explain life to you and start studying it relentlessly. You need to stop looking for safety in systems and start building safety in skill. That's what school never taught you. That's what Machiavelli tried to. And now it's your move. So ask yourself this one final time. What part of you is still waiting to be taught what you already know you must learn for yourself? That's where your power begins. Not in rebellion, not in rage, but in radical clarity, or in seeing the world as it is not as you wish it was, and choosing, moment by moment, to move through it with wisdom, fire, and freedom. The world does not need more obedient graduates. It needs more dangerous minds. Minds that are awake. Minds that are sharp. Minds that are done being ruled by invisible scripts. So if you're still waiting for permission, this is it. Go become dangerous. The kind of dangerous that builds, that liberates, that leads. That's what Machiavelli meant. And now you know.